Senator Grassley, always good to talk to you. And I know you're in Iowa and back home on the farm.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. And you might be interested in knowing that at several of my town meetings, in fact, all except one of 13 town meetings I had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the Fast and Furious issue came up. And one of the town meetings I had in Carroll, Iowa, a guy came with a shirt that had NRA on it.
Wow. Well, I think it proves people are fed up with what is going on.
Yes.
And specifically, you are now demanding answers from Todd Jones, the acting director of ATF, on how a key player in Fast and Furious, Bill McMahon, has been allowed to double dip, collect his government paycheck while getting a second paycheck from J.P. Morgan. I can only imagine your reaction when you first heard about this.
Well, of course, not only do I have every right to be furious, the more this information gets out, the taxpayers of this country are going to be furious about it. And there's probably several things that need to be answered, but two key issues I think need to be answered is, number one, is there really a policy of the federal government that allows somebody to get a full-time paycheck from the federal government and go out and get another job, and a full-time job at that? And the second thing is that if that is the policy of the federal government, would you let a guy that is suspect of encouraging gun running and gun running that ended up in the murder of a Border Patrol agent, would you give that special privilege to that specific individual? Has he earned it? Thirdly, he's got privileges as a person that was involved with Fast and Furious that a whistleblower by the name of Mr. Dotson does not have the information. He can't even get information saying that he wasn't culpable in the whole thing, and he can't get that statement until the Inspector General's report done. And then the last thing is, and maybe the most important thing is, whether this is a policy or not, whether it's right that McMahon have it, if it is a policy of the federal government, who made this decision that he could continue on the federal payroll drawing a full-time paycheck till he got to retirement 6 or 7 months down the road and still go to work for somebody else on a full-time job? No. Who's responsible? Because the buck's got to stop at somebody's desk.
Yeah, it does. And, you know, I know that recently Todd Jones has talked about how he's going to change things. This is accountability. This is change where you can lie to Congress and you're still allowed to double dip, as you said, in order to qualify for your government pension. The agents are furious, as you said, about this. They call it a double standard.
Yeah. Well, and you probably know that when the acting director gave a speech to the employees discouraging whistleblowers, he said we misunderstood him. And maybe he was misunderstood, but the point is that it didn't send a very good signal that it was okay for whistleblowers to come to members of Congress when they weren't being adequately, their complaints weren't being adequately reviewed up the chain of command. So we want to know who okayed this, but I seriously question whether or not it is the policy of the government that this situation can exist. But if it is the policy of government that it can exist, I think the policy ought to be changed.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, the ATF's spokesman says, you know, well, we can't really comment on it right now. We're reviewing the letter, but all we can tell you is that Bill McMahon still is currently employed by ATF. Does it concern you that we're going to see a rerun of what we saw with ATF about who did it and who approved it and who knew about it?
Well, of course, it's not quite as complicated of an issue,
right.
But we ought to be able to get answers that we're being stonewalled in regard to Fast and Furious, and it hasn't gone on over a longer period of time. But I'm afraid that, let's put it this way, I'm cynical enough to think that we're not going to get any answers on anything on Fast and Furious until the day after election.
Mm-hmm. And I know from the start you have said heads need to roll. Is this
Yeah,
what you meant?
yeah, and that isn't just in a Fast and Furious. That's a principle that I think holds for all wrongdoing in government. If heads don't roll, nothing's going to change. And this is not involved with just a particular individual. You're talking about you got to change the culture of a whole organization.
Yeah. And as you're back home and you're hearing, I mean, how can we even think about moving forward from Fast and Furious when you've got things like this happening? People getting special treatment, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, it's really special treatment. It's take care of your own. Have a total disregard for the taxpayers. Stretch maybe well-meaning regulations to the zenith. Treat equal people unequally. Things like that.
Yeah. And, in the wake of all this, we've got the Inspector General's report now in the hands of the DOJ. We won't find out what's in that report for 30 days. It's supposed to be an independent report. Do you have confidence in this Inspector General?
More confidence than I did in the acting Inspector General because, they came inside the organization, and until you get Senate confirmation, they don't have a great deal of independence. All I can tell you, well, maybe I better back up and say, depending on what this report says, I'll be better able to tell you, do I have confidence in this Inspector General? But I can tell you this, that he came to my office about the time of assuming the role of a Senate-confirmed Inspector General, and I told him, like I tell every Inspector General, go do your job. That means you got to call it like it is. You can't knuckle under political pressure, and don't cut any corners. And he assured me that he was that sort of guy. And I think in previous interactions with him, I have confidence that he was telling me the truth. Now, he's still a political appointee. He's still working under Holder. Holder's been stonewalling us for 18 months. But if this Inspector General does what he told me he was going to do in the office, or act like he was going to act like an Inspector General should, then I think we're going to get a good report.
Senator, so the report is now in the hands of Attorney General Eric Holder. Got to ask you, are they able to make changes to this report?
They're able to suggest changes, but the final product is the Inspector General. And so the extent to which he let the Attorney General change anything, then that's up to the intellectual honesty and independence of the Inspector General.
It's going to be very interesting to see what it has to say because, Bill McMahon, we were just talking about it, he was one of the 5 ATF officials singled out in a congressional report, and it'll be very interesting to compare the Inspector General's report with the congressional report.
Yeah, well, ISIS and our staff wrote that report, and I think it's pretty thorough. It's got all the documentation. It's got just page after page, maybe thousands of footnotes. We think we did a pretty good job of saying where we've been stopped, what we know, things we know that the Justice Department ought to know, that the Justice Department ought to give us those documents, and they haven't given us to us. And I think that they're going to have a pretty difficult time refuting the things that is in the Isa Grassley report.
Mm-hmm. So you get the report. When you do, then what happens?
Well, then what happens then is the extent to which action is going to be taken to discipline the people that are at fault. But it still doesn't deliver the documents to us that we want. They're separated from us under executive privilege. We're being stonewalled, and so the House of Representatives has gone to court now that Holder is violating civil contempt. So we're getting an independent judge to go through the 74,000 pages that haven't been given to us yet. By the way, we only got 6,000 pages, so 90% of what we want, we don't have. Supposedly, we can't get it because of executive privilege. If that executive privilege stands, it'd be the most sweeping exercise of executive privilege that I know of.
Yeah.
And so we got to have an independent judge go through these under the contempt citation and see the legitimacy of the president's executive privilege and the extent to which it's not legitimate. And I don't think any of it's legitimate. We'll get those documents.
Yeah. Well, and we've got November, you said, the election coming up. Don't you think voters need to remember this when they go to the polls? What is going on in this administration when it comes to simply trying to get the truth for the family of Brian Terry's family?
Yeah. And even beyond making sure that a legitimate, or even beyond, we got to make sure that a stupid program like this doesn't happen in the future. We've got to get the information for the Terry family. We got to get the guy fired that approved of it. But even beyond that, as far as people remembering Fast and Furious for the election, the people need to remember Fast and Furious as just one, albeit great big example, but among a lot of even lesser examples, that this president is not living up to the statement that he made on January the 20th, that he was going to be the most transparent president, and this was going to be the most transparent administration in the history of our country. Well, when you don't get 74,000 pages and the president declares executive privilege over that, the president is the most stonewalling of presidents I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well,
and not transparent.
Yeah, and you're right. You've got cover-ups, you've got scandals, you've got special treatment, and you've got agents putting their lives on the line, and you've got the American people who are saying, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, and they want answers, and that's what congressional oversight is to get answers, not just for the people, but to keep decision-makers in the executive branch of government responsible, and to hold them responsible, and hopefully through congressional oversight, make sure that the laws are faithfully executed.